tonight will be from 5:30 till 6:30. We will take public comment. The public comment, we have several signed up, so we will limit it to 3 minutes. I ask if you have spoken at one of the other meetings, if I call your name, would you wait and let everyone who hasn't had an opportunity to speak, because maybe they couldn't come to another meeting, and then we'll do the ones who have spoken before if we have time at the end of the meeting. So before we start, we'll stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. There were 2 students who signed up when we were at Longley on Thursday night, and they also had expressed an interest in going to hear the justice speak tonight. So if they're in the audience and want to speak first, would you raise your hand or come forward? Okay, come ahead. And when you come to the microphone, we are being live streamed and recorded, so if you'll just say what your name is.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you'll get it a little closer to you.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name is Keeling Baker, and I'm the student body president at Little Rock Central High School. This is my second meeting of these meetings, and I wish I had come to all the ones before, because these meetings have made me so proud of my community, of our community. What I've seen and heard in this room, or not this room, but at Longley, we are making our voices heard, overcoming the obstacles that some people are putting in our way, and this is the amazing part of Little Rock. We can and do come together, despite the labels that people like to put on us, and bond over our common humanity for a common goal. As I said, I go to Central, and it has been the best thing that's ever happened to me because of the diversity, the people, the bond, and the community there. Ladies and gentlemen, it almost didn't even happen, though. My father lived in and went to school in Little Rock, and went to school, private school in Little Rock as a child. But when it was my time, he sent me to our public schools because he had such faith in this community, not the state government. I thank God above every day that my parents sent me to Little Rock Central, a Little Rock school district, because the experience I've received there from attending our public schools, the public Little Rock School District, has been the best thing that's ever happened to me. But this experience of diversity won't be available to kids for long, and our academics will not improve if we remain shackled by this board. So ladies and gentlemen of the board, please take our message to Mr. Johnny Key. This is a community of Mr. Johnny Key, excuse me. This is a community of competent and intelligent people. Stop controlling us like children and do what's best for the children and give us back our district. Finally, thank you to every teacher here. We owe you everything.
The fire marshal has sent a note that says, please remind those in attendance that everyone must be in a seat per the fire marshal's order, and there is an overflow space in the lobby just down the hall. Don't shoot the messenger. Yes. There's a seat up here on the front, one on the second row, and one here. So we can take at least 3 more people. I think they're motioning. There's a couple of seats back there as well. Okay. Please be patient with me if I don't say your name exactly right. I will do my best. Amanda, Mamula. I'm reading from a list from last Thursday night. Alice Kuntz. Herb Rule. Mr. Rule, if I remember correctly, you spoke at another meeting, so would you mind giving your time?
No, I would.
Okay.
I'll take 3 minutes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for letting me speak. Can you hear me all right? I've been in your shoes before, but I was elected, and you not. So would you keep that in mind? Because what's happening now is you're flummoxed. You know what that means? Well, check it out. Flummoxed. You are not leading and you have no plan, and it's time to have a plan. Plan to return the school district to its public, the voters, the property owners here. It's time to do that. And it's time to, in the alternative or at the same time, to call for a vote on an increased millage, if you have the courage to do that, because the school district needs the support of its citizens to make its facilities and its teachers' pay continue to lead this state and many other states. We've been a leader for a long time, the Little Rock School District has, and it needs to continue to be that way. It doesn't need to stagnate as it's doing now. No more willy-wahs. It's time for you to make a decision and put some reasonable conditions on it to turn the school district back to the voters in this district. And do it now. The question that I have is, if it's your mission to fix the schools, what are you going to do? What's wrong with them? You don't know, do you? No, you don't know. And that's why it takes a locally elected school board with teachers and principals and a superintendent that is answerable to the public to run the Little Rock School District. It's time now to find a better way for you to spend your Tuesday afternoons. You aren't earning your pay. The pay is nothing, but you're not earning it. What you need to do, if you've got the courage to do it, is to exercise some leadership and to do what's right. And the clearly right thing to do is to turn the district back to its rightful owners. In other words, as we hear in the words of Moses in Exodus, let our school district go.
KWADJO BOAITY. Is that person here? Jamie Dempsey. Tim Jackson. Okay, I'll put a mark by your name if we have time. We'll come back to you. Roy Snook. Ryan Davis. Tanya Stafford. Clark Tucker.
That's not looking at this, you can strike me from today's list.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Clark Tucker, and I'm a product of Little Rock School District. First of all, I want to thank you all very much for having these community forums, but I also want to thank the members of the Little Rock community who have shown up so overwhelmingly at every one of the meetings so far, and all the passion that's come forth. I think there's been one point that has been, if not entirely unanimous, almost unanimous, and that is that we want control of our school district back. I've hesitated to speak to y'all, number one, because y'all have heard from me a number of times before, and also because I didn't know what I could add to the conversation beyond all the voices that we've heard from. But number one, I do want to say for the record that I am advocating as strongly as I can for immediate and full return to local control of the Little Rock School District. Secondly, I want to raise a question that's been in my mind that I haven't been able to answer. Now, I understand the state's commitment to public education in Arkansas, and I respect and appreciate that. But my question is, why does that commitment have to come at the expense of the people of Little Rock having a voice in their own community and how their tax dollars are spent for their local school district. My question is, why does this have to be an either-or situation? Why can we not work together to provide a world-class education for the students in Little Rock? And what we have right now is not a trusting partnership. The message to the people of Little Rock with the current dynamic is, we know better than you how to educate your children and how to spend your tax dollars, and you're not qualified to have a seat at this table. But if you give local control back to the Little Rock School District, that does not remove the state from the education of the students in Little Rock any more than the state is removed from public education in any part of the state. Now, if what we want is just a seat at the table, and since it's our tax dollars at stake, I really feel like we want a seat at our own table, right? But that doesn't mean that we won't accept a partnership and support. If the state wants to continue to provide support, intensive support, if it's professional learner communities or whatever the case might be, the people of Little Rock, in my opinion, will welcome support from wherever we can get it to provide a world-class education for our students. The question now is, why do the people of Little Rock have to have our voices removed from that process? I don't think that has to be the case. Let's work together for the future. The founders of our country recognized that every generation could lose democracy, which means that every generation must save it. It's our time now to save democracy in Little Rock, and that choice is in your hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tony Orr.
Good evening. 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago, I stood in this same building advocating for this committee not to take over the Little Rock School District. As I walked in today, I see it's a brand new building. It's a brand new place. But it also reminds me of the Little Rock School District. Everything in here looks so wonderful, it looks so great, it looks so grand, it looks so pretty. But the issues that were here 5 years ago are still here. When you look at the Little Rock School District, 5 years ago you took it over to make it this grand palace, to make this grand showcase, to make it better. 5 years later, the same issues still plague the Little Rock School District. When you took over, I was upset, as any parent in here was, as any citizen of Little Rock was. But I backed off and I gave you your shot. Maybe you will do better. With all the resources of the state, with all the money the state could put into the district, it will get better, because I trust my state government. And you know what? It hasn't happened. In fact, we've gone backwards instead of forward. And now the question is, instead of this committee saying, well, maybe it's time to give it back, now we have to come and go through these forums and beg you to give us back what's rightfully ours. If any one of you went to a store and you bought something and it didn't work, you would take it back and get a return on your money. I have paid a lot of money. I know Mr. Key gets paid. I don't know about the rest of you, but you've been taking my money. And you haven't shown me anything that you've done with my money. So now I'm coming with my receipt and I'm asking, return me either my money or my district. Now I know you're not gonna get my money back. I already know that. That's not gonna happen. But give us our shot. 5 years ago, the school board was hijacked. The newly elected, democratically elected school board was hijacked. So now, you haven't done it, so give us our district back. And one last thing. I don't know when the last time any of you have been in the school district, been in the schools. These teachers work hard. I've graduated 2 students out of the Little Rock School District. I have twins that graduate this year. I have a daughter who graduates in 2 years. I have 3 grandchildren that are in the district now. And these teachers work hard with limited resources. You took away reading recovery, you took away math literacy, you do not put resources into the schools, and you expect them to do something with less. And then you turn around and you want to blame them with fair dismissal when things don't go the way you want them to go. So, once again, give me back my district.
Michelle Lynch. Michelle Lynch.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Lynch, speaking as a community member today. I've had a child and now have many family members in the district. In addition, I have 3 unique lenses I've not heard in the past meetings that I believe we need to filter through the local control issue through as decisions are made. Lens number 1, I taught and led in a very high-performing, low-income, 98% minority inner-city school where we built the culture to where over 90% of the over 2,000 students passed their state-mandated exams, and our special ed students outscored the district's regular ed students in some areas. You never forget lessons of excellence, and our students deserve excellence. Lens number 2, I pursued my PhD because I wanted a deep understanding of the how and the why of the first lens. Then, as a UALR professor, I read hundreds of reports and reflections from my students' LRSD field experience. I wondered then why the district was decades behind, and that was 10 years ago. Lens number 3, although 3 of the 6 schools did come out of academic distress within 2 years of state takeover, and great strides have been made, especially in the past 9 months, this third lens gave me the answer to the why LRSD was and still is decades behind in so many critical areas, from leadership to culture. As a governor's appointee for over 10 years to the Desegregation Litigation Oversight Committee, I learned that Arkansas taxpayers had been handing LRSD an extra $38 million per year for over 30 years. At one point, legislators in our meetings started asking tougher questions, such as, how is this money spent? The answer, I'll never forget that day, from LRSD, their federal monitors, and the Department of Ed was, we don't know how it's spent. It's all put into one big pot, and so we really can't tell. This was $38 million per year extra for over 30 years under LRSD local control, who couldn't tell Arkansas taxpayers with no local representation how the money was spent and had little to show for it. If money was the answer, we have a 3-decade, $1.3 billion experiment that says there's more to it. What was meant to advance equity and kids' learning seems to have advanced adult and organization agendas and bank accounts instead. However, we've seen a glimpse of what effective state control for academic reason looks like when the literacy audit was requested by the state board. Outside auditors went into the district, issues were identified, issues have been addressed, and now, even though it's painful, the state closely monitors implementation and is building internal capacity to self-monitor. I encourage the board to learn from the past and transition LRSD to local control in a manner that has strong state accountability and monitoring so that parents and students can be confident the district can catch up from being decades behind and students' learning and equity put first so that we can close the learning and opportunity gaps in LRSD. Thank you.
This looks like Laura D. Okay, good, it is.
Hello.
If you'll give it, I gave your name, but if you'll give it again, so.
My name is Laura. Members of the board, I stand before you today as a social worker and educator who remains gravely concerned with decisions that you have made and may continue to make for LRSD. Reasons for this are threefold. Grave concern number 1. After the Arkansas State Board of Education colonized the Little Rock School District, you made a switch to the ACT Aspire standardized test. You used this test to assign failing grades to several schools in LRSD and to support your takeover. This was a bad idea for 3 reasons. According to Pearson, which is the company that constructs the test, it is not advisable or reliable to use only this test to grade a school, and that conclusions based on student achievement should be supported by additional information from other sources. Suggested sources could include social, economic, and instructional factors that contribute to educational achievement. Pearson further states that few of these factors are measured by their test. Based on Pearson's own recommendations to you, assigning failing scores to any school without considering other ways to measure true learning and growth is irresponsible and misleading. Further, this test is not used by any other state in the United States to assess K-8 learning. Finally, the state of Alabama trashed this test because scores plummeted and a board member considered it racially biased. Why haven't you questioned the validity of this test since LRSD serves mostly black and brown students? 31 other states in this country have developed their own specific tests that accurately measure their own curriculum. Why can't we? Grave concern number 2. It is beyond apparent that there are significant conflicts of interest in this board's makeup. While I am not here to debate the validity of charter schools, I think we need to address your ability to be truly objective. In good faith, how can you expect us to trust you to address public educational needs in our district when one of you has a family member acting as a CEO of an organization that supports charter school expansion and an additional family member serving on that board, therefore directly benefiting from more closures of our public schools? When one of you has a family member that is using the Freedom of Information Act to request a list of the names of students on the wait list for LRSD schools, the names, race, and gender, and GPA of gifted and talented students in LRSD schools, as well as how many students each LRSD school will hold, all of which we can only assume is to poach certain students from LRSD. And how can we trust you when one of you has spent a large portion of your career working for Walmart, a staunch ideological and financial supporter for the charter school movement, again, all of which directly benefit from the closure of more LRSD schools? My final grave concern. As a social worker, I'm invested in how adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs, affect individuals. ACEs encompasses all types of abuse, neglect, and traumatic experiences affecting children that can follow them into adulthood and act as social determinants of health. This is extremely important in Arkansas, where we rank #1 in the United States for ACEs. A child's school experience can contribute to their ACEs score or serve as a protective factor. A child's school experience can even determine the longevity of their life. The additional trauma caused by this takeover, as evidenced by a high school student last week at a meeting that spoke about it, is significant. Please do not contribute to these child's ACEs scores any more than you already have by continuing to stigmatize and alienate them. Please loosen your grip on this district and accept that returning it to a locally appointed school board while keeping it fully intact could literally save lives. I will finish with this statement. LRSD has a legacy of violence from its governing bodies dating back to Orville Faubus's reign of terror over Central High School. Your decision to take over LRSD and keep it in a stranglehold while continuing to arbitrarily assign failing school grades, as well as your continued threat to students through closures, charter expansion, and potential reconstitution is psychologically violent and adds to this state's collective ACEs score. There are plenty of us who would work hard to support a locally elected board who can address our specific needs. I want LRSD students to make it to my classroom. Please help us ensure that they do.
Thank you. Veronica McLean.
Hello, my name is Veronica McLean. I'm a licensed clinical social worker here in the state of Arkansas. Tonight, I come to you not as a parent, but as from my profession. I also come representing 85 other social workers and behavioral health professionals, and that was as of 5 minutes ago when I checked the signature log. We have penned a letter directed towards you, the board. I will now read it. Attention, Commissioner Johnny Key and members of the Arkansas State Board of Education. The following letter is a collective effort of behavioral health workers throughout the state. This group of professionals includes social workers, licensed professional counselors, marriage and family therapists, and more who have come together as a collective voice in order to shed light on your failure to meet the need of not only the children of Little Rock Public Schools, but of all children of the state of Arkansas. We are aware of how many of the policies and laws being enacted at this time by the state government are not your doing, and we are also aware how you willingly carry out actions that align with the elected officials' methodical dismantling of our publicly funded behavioral health and social welfare systems. Your failure to make informed decisions based on scientific data related to the performance of children in school as it relates to the socioeconomic factors, adverse childhood experiences, and the need for a strong behavioral health safety net is, in our professional opinion, doing irreparable harm to the children of the state. As social workers and behavioral health professionals, it is our professional responsibility to advocate for those who are marginalized and continue to be historically silenced. Your uninformed policies and your refusal to take action that builds up social services and behavioral health services in our public schools will no longer be accepted. If you truly seek to address the scientifically proven reasons for chronic underperformance of our school children, abandon the use of standardized tests that are not measuring true academic achievement of our students. The criteria you use to grade our schools disproportionately affects students who are low income, students of color, as well as students in schools that are financially under-resourced. It is also time to take significant action on implementing policies that create learning environments which lead to actual learning and growth of all children. Behavioral health services and access to resources within the community are imperative to the success and brain development of all children. Your obsession with higher scores on standardized tests that do not take into account the extremely impactful learning that is taking place in schools you deem to be failing, along with your failure to stay up to date on the overwhelming research that goes against the majority of the actions you are taking, is akin to neglect and abuse. You are failing to carry out the duties you were appointed to do. In order to begin moving forward and to maintain a public school system designed to serve all the children of Arkansas, excuse me, we demand that rather than implementing tests that large corporations construct, Arkansas follow the lead of the 31 other states in the country that develop their own state tests that match the college readiness standards for the state. We demand you provide school counselors for every single school in the district who are highly trained and who have a focus other than improving standardized tests. We demand no more traveling counselors who cover well over the suggested student caseload. We demand a licensed social worker be placed in every single school.
Oh, your time is up. Can you
I'm going to
wind
keep
it up?
going because I'm representing 80 professionals in this
Well,
state.
that's not the way it works.
We demand the expansion of early intervention programs such as preschool for 3- and 4-year-olds throughout the state. We demand the implementation of community-based health programs which are integrated into the schools. We demand the increase of unstructured play and unstructured peer interaction time for all students regardless of their academic and behavioral performance. We demand the immediate end to harmful punishments inflicted on our children through our current disciplinary methods, especially those methods that are disproportionately applied to children of color. We demand implementation of effective behavior management programs such as mindfulness and self-regulation skill building into the daily curriculum. We demand the implementation of evidence-based trauma training for all teachers. We demand implicit bias training for the Commissioner of Education, all division commissioners of education, all education department employees, all school administrators and staff, and most importantly, for you, the board. We demand an immediate end to all practices which bolster and support institutional racism in our schools and lead to irreparable harm to the children of the state. We demand the creation and inclusion of a behavioral health task force to hold you, the board, accountable as you make further decisions which have long-term impacts on the health of our children. Finally, we demand all these actions and laws be implemented in charter schools as well. Any failure for a charter school in the state of Arkansas to implement these programs will result in immediate recoupment of funds and revocation of the charter of the school in question. We would also like for it to be noted on public record how many of the social workers and behavioral health workers of Arkansas are frustrated with the greed-driven policies being implemented across the state, which seek to undermine and cut funding for vital behavioral health and social support services for our citizens. If you truly seek to build up public schools and make sure that they are performing adequately, and if you are not harboring nefarious profit-driven plans enacted by large corporations seeking to make a profit off of the children of Arkansas, then you will immediately enact the demands listed above. If you feel you are incapable of carrying out your appointed duty without inflicting harm or abuse on the children of the state, then it is time for you to recuse yourself. It is time for the board to take responsibility for their detrimental actions and stop causing lifelong health problems for the children of Arkansas.
Vic Snyder.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board, and thank you for the time. My name is Vic Snyder. I have, my wife and I have 4 boys in the Little Rock District at Fourth Heights. We have 7 years to go. We love our school, and I'm one of those parents like most are. You try to do what you can to improve your school, so I've cut grass and picked up trash. I've even arranged for a llama, a camel, and a Clydesdale horse to visit the school. But it's not very important compared to the decisions what you all are making here and to what our teachers do every day. I come down on the side.
Congressman, if you'll pull the mic.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, there
Sorry.
you go.
I want Randy to be able to hear me in the back there. So. I come down on the side of supporting a return to an elected school board, but I think my comments apply to whatever governance structure we come up with for any school district. First of all, it's a very practical one. I want someone to complain to. Will Bond lives across the street from me, and I think he's not running for re-election because I complain to him too often. But I can't complain to you. Poor Mr. Poor, I've called him up about down wires, trash, lights out, electric signs not working. I want a board member that I can call up and let them figure out where in the system things needed to be improved. Second reason is I don't think we've been working very well together as a team. When Mr. Curris was let go, I didn't know him well, but when Mr. Curris was let go, I felt like someone stole a dog. And then when Mr. Poor was appointed, I felt like the next day I was sent a puppy. Now, Mr. Poor, I have grown to love my new puppy. I want you to know that. I've grown to love my new puppy. But it did not feel like we were working together as a team. Part of that, too, is we focus a lot on the schools that we think are really having challenges, and I applaud those efforts and appreciate it. I go to a school that has a 5% chronic absentee rate and is considered one of the best in the district. But that's 1 out of 20 kids. That's 1 out of 20 kids. I think we all need to be working together and figure out what can we all do. What do any of those kids need? I don't think it's my principal's job to go out and do home visits. I don't think it's the teacher's job. I mean, what can we do as a community and a board to come together and say, what can we do to work on all these kids that have chronic absentee issues? I know that as in older kids, it's a huge hassle if there's a sick kid in the family. I think older kids get pulled at home to take care of younger ones when they get sick. Finally, transparency. Controversy happens. I mentioned Mr. Curris's termination and hiring of Mr. Poor. Controversy happens in government. The very controversial the placement of East End at the ULR campus. Very controversial. That's what we have democracies for, to thrash out these controversial issues. That's just the way it is. Surprise is not supposed to be part of democracy. There's supposed to be transparency. And when I read or hear on the news when I'm getting my shower in the morning about some of those decisions, that's not how we're supposed to work together. Thank you for giving me this time.
Thank you.
I won't give you my notes, Johnny.
Ryan Foster. Okay, he's coming in the door now.
I'm speaking on his behalf tonight, and I'm not going to be that long either.
You want to say your name? Sir?
My name is Erica Conley. Everyone who does not know me on the board. On July 29, 2016, Governor Asa Hutchinson spoke at the National Republican Convention, and these are some of his speaking points at the convention. Governor Hutchins stated, we have $177 million, $177 million surplus dollars in the state of Arkansas. And this was in 2016. The board had been taken over by about a year now, and I was at Henderson Middle School, labeled as a distressed middle school. My years spent at that middle school, it was very much hard for me. My teachers did everything they could for me, but there wasn't enough resources in the school. I was taking hard standardized test systems, tests that I wasn't getting trained for. It was very hard for me. It wasn't a wholesome view for me. But we can do better, though, he went on to say, for our country at the national level. How could you do better for our country at a national level if you're not taking care of home first, Arkansas? If you're not taking care of the students who sit in these classrooms that are the future, how can you take care of home? He went on to say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, y'all, I'm nervous.
That's okay.
He went on to say, ladies and gentlemen, it takes experience. And I've been going to these meetings, and I just been thinking, I never saw you, Mr. Key. I never saw you, Mr. Key, ever at any of the board members. And you are the education commissioner, and I've never saw you. And I just want you to know, most of my teachers, most of the parents have more education than you because you have a bachelor's degree. Most of these students' parents and most of these teachers, they have master's degrees, PhDs, and they have a lot of love for black, brown, and white children trying to get a free education, Mr. Key. I also want to say, Mr. Key, I also want to tell you this. It's been mighty funny how all the Little Rock School District budget has been cut, running out of resources, don't have tutoring, have to pay for tutoring. But Springdale, Northwest Arkansas, they're getting big facilities in their schools. They're getting the state of the art at their schools. But us black, brown, and us white people in Little Rock School District that's trying to get a free education, a good education, a world-class education, we have to work hard. This is reminding me of slave times. And I'm just gonna go on to tell you this as well. I'm sorry, I'm taking my time, y'all. We can do better. We can start at home first. And I wanna say this, and then I'll sit down. The Southwest High School is gonna open up in 2020. So a lot of people might not know this, but I'm from Little Rock. I know the urban culture, Mr. Key. I know that. You're opening up a Southwest High School, knowing what's happening of East I-30 in the Hanger Hill neighborhoods, and then you're bringing people all the way from the west side to be in one school, so it can be a lot of murders at the school. So, and then you cut the budget, you cut the security guards out of the schools because you want these kids to cause trouble at the schools. I see it, Mr. Key. I've been seeing it since I was at Henderson Middle School, and this is touching to my home. This is touching to my heart because I knew the people that have lost their lives. I knew the people, and you're doing that on purpose. I know your tactics. Don't do it. Release the Little Rock School District, Mr. Key. Release it. I know the taxes that you're trying to play. I know what you're doing. You're playing with these kids' minds. You're trying to promote them to drop out, Mr. Key. I know what you're doing. I know exactly what you're doing. We have teachers from Hall High School. We have teachers from McClellan High School that know what's going on as well. And I shouldn't have to get up out my bed east of I-30 and drive all the way to Highway 10 for a good education, Mr. Key. And I also want to say this. Please leave Walmart with Walmart and know that this is the LRSD. This is not no corporate business, Mr. Key. This is our life. We have to get ready for the world, set up for the world through education. So stop the games that you're playing and be real with yourself.
Elizabeth Huggins. Elizabeth Huggins.
She's a student. Listen. You did a good job.
My name is Elizabeth Huggins. I'm the mother of a senior at Parkview High School, and I'm a proud 1987 graduate of Hall High. I believe that Little Rock should have an elected school board, appointed people who have been placed in their position by other appointed people as taxation without representation. I do not believe that schools should be closed. There is a negative impact to the community surrounding these closed schools when a child is not going to school in their neighborhood. It makes it harder for the parents to be involved, harder for parents to come for conferences, math and literacy night, movie night, field day, and we don't need to raise the millage and throw more money at the problem. The district has plenty of money. What we need are fiscally responsible adults in administration who are student-focused. The Little Rock School District needs to stop being an employment agency and instead get in the business of educating kids. We need an administration who will support our teachers and provide them with appropriate materials and training so that all kids can learn how to read. Show me your 5 or 6-year-old child who walks into school the first day saying, "I hope I don't get to learn how to read." And I'll show you a teacher who says, "I will only teach 30 to 40% of my kids how to read." And we can't do that because neither of those things are true. Thank you.
Thank you. Micah Qualls.
Oh, it's good to see you, Commissioner Key. Glad you could join us. I wish the rest of the board was actually present. That'd be nice, since it's such an important evening.
They're on the phone.
Okay, cool. First, I would like to say that my husband and I gave up our tickets to see the incomparable Ruth Bader Ginsburg because my students are more important to me than to meet her in person. I have prepared my thoughts this evening in writing so I can be very precise in what I have to say. So here it goes. I haven't taken the mic since the first meeting. I decided, even though I am a proud and fierce educator in the Little Rock School District and a longtime educator with 12 years behind me, that I would not center myself at this mic when our community voices, parents, and students have so much more to lose when all is said and done if the State Board of Education chooses to reconstitute the Little Rock School District. And at the end of the day, I will still be teaching in schools that people have written off because I would teach nowhere else. You do not have to recruit me, an award-winning 12th-year educator, to teach in a, quote, failing school. I would go nowhere else. So after 4 meetings of staying silent, I cannot anymore. Now, I could use my time up here to point out that only 2 people on this Board of Education actually live in Little Rock or care about the fate of this district. I could spend my time pointing out the massive corruption and cover-ups regarding FOIA requests and other legal issues surrounding ICE visits and a whole plethora of other issues. I could spend my time discussing how stressful teachers feel across the district when asked to adhere to curriculum they have had little to no training to implement. I could spend my time up here talking about how many of our board members are connected via family members or themselves to the charter school movement and the Waltons. I could spend my time up here talking about how no one on the board, or maybe 1 or 2 of you, even know where Franklin Elementary or Woodruff Elementary are on a map. I could spend my time talking about how much optics mean more to this district than students. I could spend my time harping on how little qualifications Commissioner Johnny Key has to be in charge of such an important state in the system of education we hold so dear. I could even spend my time up here talking about how hard it is to work with students who deal with more problems than a test can ever measure. Every day in this district, hardworking teachers have to wear many hats. At the high school level, I have to play educator, mentor, role model, mother, father, psychologist, many more roles. And I gladly do it every day because my calling is not just to teach, but to serve. My husband is also a dedicated teacher and coach in this district, what you deem a failing school, both of us at 2 failing schools. Proudly. Our whole household serves this district, lovingly and willingly. We would work nowhere else, even though we have both been highly recruited by surrounding districts, including his alma mater, Bryant, where he is in the Sports Hall of Fame. We will not go there. We want to work here because of our specific skill sets. So instead of rehashing all the talking points that so many of us have made in our community, that we want our school district back whole, not in pieces, and now, I would like to focus on the real reason we should all be here, our students. Since many of my students need love, acceptance, support, and the basic first level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like food and shelter, I want to focus on that. Can any of you look yourself in the mirror? If you participate in de facto segregation of the Little Rock School District or sell out to the Walton family over the needs of our kids, sadly, I think some of you can and will. So in closing, I want you to listen to not my words, but the words of a child in a school you call failing. Dear Miss Qualls, I guess I'm supposed to write a letter to you. Honestly, I think you know how grateful I am. You were the support that I needed to stay at this school. You were. Yes, you were. There were so many opportunities that I could have left this school, but I didn't, because the school I would go to wouldn't have you. You have treated me like the student I actually am, and I respect and adhere and admire you for it. You respect my opinions and want to know about them, and it makes me feel heard on my darkest nights. You're so supportive of the LGBTQ+ community, and you don't let anyone disrespect them, and you're just a wonderful teacher overall. I have watched you try and try over again to give students a chance to earn a good grade in your class, and I have seen you miserably walk over to your computer and put it in as a 0. You honestly embody what a teacher should be. You don't discriminate, you don't judge, you offer safety in your room. You are honestly everything a teacher should embody. You keep us on task and you teach instead of forcing us to memorize. You let us learn, and you often connect it to real life events, and you make sure that everyone understands the topic to the tiniest detail before moving on to the next subject. You let us express ourselves. And we often have days where we learn for a while and then we just talk and let the day go and tell our problems. And you help me through so much. I respect you more than any teacher of this school, and it's mainly because you see the student for the student, and you don't see their skin or their weight or their sexual orientation. You see their heart, and if they don't have a heart, you provide one. You are one of the best teachers to walk this earth, and I am so excited to be in class with you next year. Thank you for all you do. And you know what? I can produce 1,000 more letters from my 12 years of teaching from these kids. When all is said and done, what will be your legacy? Free the LRSD.
Deborah Buerman. Did I butcher your last name?
Very common. It's always butchered. Deborah Byerman. I have followed the reports of the previous forums and reports of yelling, screaming, demanding, disrespect, and these are behaviors I would not like to see emulated in my children. But what I've not heard until tonight, I've heard a few.
Hold on, I'm sorry.
What I would like to see addressed is the real issue, and that is educating our children. If children are not being educated, what difference does it make who is in charge? The district was placed under state control because the previous Little Rock school boards had failed for years to educate the children. Apparently, we don't know yet, the state has not made a change in that failure in some schools. What do the proponents of returned local school propose to do to succeed in educating the children? What will be different this time when they take over again? I would submit that the issue is not who is in control, but the methods that are being used. What is being done now doesn't seem to be working to educate children. Shouldn't it be changed? What needs to be reconstituted is the method of educating. There was talk not long ago in this district about the lack of help for children with dyslexia learning to read. I have a dyslexic child who graduated from Little Rock High School with honors. I saw to it that he learned to read. I taught him. I hired tutors. I paid for testing. And when he was in high school, I simply tried to get extended time for test taking. The woman, one of the women who was on the committee to decide this, turned to me and said, "Your child does not have dyslexia." As far as I know, she'd never talked to my child or even met my child. That was about 20 years ago. Apparently, nothing has changed. Dyslexics need to learn to read phonetically. I have a theory that 70 years ago, all children were taught phonetically to read. Dyslexics were able to learn in the classroom along with other children and were never labeled. Wouldn't that method work well today? The key to academic success is learning to read. Shouldn't that be the primary focus for elementary grades? A person who can read can learn all kinds of other things, and he can learn to think. Another mark of an educated person. Generally, elected officials become politicians who focus on being re-elected. The children need people in charge of their schools who are focused on educating. I suggest a local control on 2 board levels, an elected nominating board whose charge would be to put in place a second oversight board. District patrons could elect those they think would best represent them in choosing the members of the oversight board. Selection of oversight board members could be based on extensive research, evaluation of factors including aptitude, qualifications, and the desire to put children first in the education process. Prospective members could apply for board positions, or they could be recommended for these positions. All people on this board would be residents of the Little Rock School District. This oversight board would be representative for the children, charged with seeing to the education of the children, to include evaluation of curriculum, setting standards for behavior and discipline, as well as for content learning, and for assessing accomplishment in educating children. This board would also oversee the things the school board generally does, reviewing the budget, evaluating facility needs, hiring a superintendent. We're presented with an opportunity to learn from failure. Past and current methods of teaching are not educating all children. An authority that will oversee change is imperative.
Dr. Pepper, do we? Oh, we do have additional list, okay. And Deborah, in your response to you, that we're in our 3rd year of teaching and retraining teachers in the teaching of reading using the science of reading, which backs up the phonetics. Well, I don't know which one of these came first, so I'll just, is it Jacqueline? I'm sorry, is it Jacqueline Edie? I'm pretty sure the Jacqueline is correct. The last name, I'm sorry, it looks like E-A-D-Y, but I may not be sure. Is there a Jacqueline in the room? They're not here. They're not? Okay, she's coming. Irby, last name is Irby. Irby, okay, I apologize. If you'll state your
Good
name.
evening to everyone. My name is Jacqueline Irby. I should have printed it.
No, that's
Okay.
fine. That's fine.
I would like to thank everybody for comments. I had some questions, but I didn't know whether you was ascertaining questions or not, but I had a statement.
Okay, go ahead and make your statement, please.
Okay. I think that the Little Rock School District Board should be reinstated as soon as possible, if possible. Our parents, students are the reason that we have a Little Rock School District. Therefore, I feel that the morale of our teachers, students would benefit greatly if the board was put back in place, as well as community. All of the students of the Little Rock School District are our main priority. Our students deserve a learning environment that is productive as well as enjoyable in order for them to grow academically, socially, and emotionally. Students are not responsible for their parents or where they reside and should not be treated, they should be treated with respect, fairness, no matter where their zip codes happen to be. Fairness is the main concern. We are a resilient people and not checkers on a checkerboard. As a people, we should not place stumbling blocks or put burdens on any people by closing schools in certain areas. We should strive for fairness. There is a need for fairness and respect. And as it relates to school closings, I think the children deserve stability and their parents. When a school building, I believe, they should be closed or have to be closed for repairs, I think the parents as well as the community should be informed and they should have an input on this matter. And that would make a better transition if the school has to be closed due to maybe some type of impairment, or, it has to be maybe asbestos or something like that, or it just definitely is old and needs to be replaced. I think it should be replaced and those children should be returned to their school. I see it being the main concern as it relates to our concern. So in my mind, I don't think that an intelligent child should be judged by the test score only. Each child has some strengths as well as weaknesses. All children may not be able to excel in a traditional school and maybe need a untraditional setting or maybe an alternative setting or maybe a small school setting. In my words is, fairness is our main concern. And I think if we had that, our parents, our students, teachers, and our principals would be happier. Thank you.
Tim Jackson. And this will be our last speaker.
Thank you. I've spoken before you before. I'll try to make it brief. I would just say that you have an important decision to make. And I think it's just as important for you to know what the organizing principle of that decision is. What is your departure point? What are you starting with? And there are a lot of things when we talk about education. You could start with property taxes, who pays the most. You could start with jobs. Are we training people for jobs? You could start with, we're attracting new industry. You could start with all kinds of things And all of those are important, but none of them are the most important thing. The most important organizing principle is that there is only one entity in this city that has a moral, legal, and ethical obligation to provide a transformative education environment for every child that shows up, regardless of their race, their gender, their immigration status, their religion, their mental, emotional, physical capacities. And so if you start with any of those other organizing principles, school choice, important to the conversation, but it should not drive the conversation. Jobs, important to the conversation, but it should not drive the conversation. The Little Rock School District is the only entity that has a moral, legal, ethical responsibility to educate every child that comes to our door. And so that should shape what we do. We should not gut the LRSD. We should not divide it in sections and sell it off to the highest bidder. We should do whatever it takes to keep it intact and whole and supported so that our best resources go there. If you get on a plane in Little Rock, Arkansas to fly to Los Angeles, California, and the pilot starts 10, 15 degrees off course, you're not gonna miss Los Angeles by 10 or 15 miles. You're gonna miss it by 1,000 miles because you started in the wrong direction. The state takeover, regardless of what it's accomplished or not accomplished, was not a good departure point for the Little Rock School District. Chopping up the district now, selling it off to the highest bidders, coming up with some convoluted plan is not the departure point for a healthy, whole, vibrant, community-led, community-invested school district. We are appealing to you by just turning it back over, you will have reconstituted it. We will have a new board. We have a new superintendent. We have schools that have been given to charter companies. By its very nature, you have reconstituted the district. Now it's time to give it back and let us rebuild and let us move forward from that departure point. Give us a good point of departure. Do not hobble us with a decision that is anything less than giving us back local control.
Thank you. The board is going to now adjourn, and we will come back in 10 minutes and start our work session.
There are a lot of people here that want to speak after the board holds their meeting. If there are people who still want to speak, will you all stay and listen?
I can. I can't speak for the others. They may. I know that Senator Elliott and you and Senator Bond did say that if there's those who wanted to speak who hadn't spoken, that we could skip that. And I was trying to watch that.
Make sure that everybody who wants to speak gets a chance for the board to hear them.
Right.
If you go ahead and have a meeting, but if there are people who still want to speak, will you all stay and listen?
I will. I will say this: no one that's on the list has. Everyone who's on the list that did not speak had spoken at some point before.
That's not true.
Well,
How did you get on the list?
You signed up out front, or you?
It was way over to the side. Yes.
Okay, board's adjourned.
Before everybody leaves, and we'll hold something in this room, I just wanted to say to all of the students, and to all the parents, to all the teachers that are here, that Grassroots Arkansas believes in the Little Rock School District, that we believe, I don't know if it's all right, y'all can hear me fine, right? That the Little Rock, Grassroots Arkansas believes in the Little Rock School District. We believe in supporting the parents, the guardians, and the community of the Little Rock School District. And I want to also say that I heard somebody speak about the rudeness about calling out. But if your child runs out you right there and a car is about to run over your child, you are not going to be polite and tell that car to just slow down. You're going to scream with everything in your might and ask them to not run over your child. This board has been running over all of our children for far too long. So we have a reason to have righteous anger. We have a reason to call out all of the lies and the deceit that this board has been doing against the violence that has been happening against our children. And so when you hear us speak with passion, it's not because we're rude. It's because we are calling on those persons who are hurting our children to stop. And we recognize that they're not going to stop
I'm a home or go with, she chose. Transition. We'll see from there. Allie. Allie. I'll be happy off camera, off mic, to sit with her and her mother, but I'm not gonna, we're not gonna let. Okay, well, you asked me, that's why I answered. Yes, we are aware. We are aware. Let's wait for Kathy. I'm waiting for a couple of board members, so bear with us. If Courtney Salas Ford, one of the legal staff from ADE, will come forward and give us some specifics about the different laws and acts that govern our actions, please.
Thank you, Ms. Zook, members of the board, Commissioner Key. Courtney Salas Ford, Deputy General Counsel for the department. As requested by the board, I've compiled information on the history leading up to the state's assumption of authority of the Little Rock School District, as well as the current applicable laws and your options for consideration going forward into the work session. So on July 10th, 2014, the State Board of Education classified 6 schools in the Little Rock School District in academic distress. This meant that 49.5% or fewer of the students in those schools achieved proficient or advanced in math and literacy on state assessments for the most recent 3-year period. That classification of those 6 schools led the board on January 28, 2015, to meet and discuss possibilities under the then applicable law, Arkansas Code 615-401, commonly known as ACTAP. Section 430 of that law gave the board several options for consideration when schools in a district were classified in academic distress. In reviewing district data, the board found that 4 of the schools in academic distress, plus 2 additional schools, had state letter grades of F. 7 of the Little Rock schools were designated as priority schools under federal accountability requirements, meaning they were the lowest 5% of performing schools in the state. 9 schools were designated as focus schools, meaning they were in the lowest 10% of a subgroup performance in the state. And 21 schools were in need of school improvement. Only 1 school at that time was in fact achieving according to state and federal standards. It was further found that the Little Rock School District had a chronic and long-term history of low performance, and that many of the aforementioned schools had been in school improvement status for 6, 7, and even 8 years. This data, coupled with the district's long-term critical fiscal issues and lack of implementation of changes in policy and staff, supported improvement of student performance, as well as that board's recognition of its statutory and constitutional obligation to ensure an adequate education for all students, led the board to assume authority of the Little Rock School District in 2015. 2 years later, April 5th, 2017, the state legislature passed Act 930 of 2017, known as the Arkansas Educational Support and Accountability Act. This act repealed ACTAP, the law formerly that was applicable and that gave the board its authority to take authority of the Little Rock School District. Act 930 completely transformed the state's public school accountability system. In particular, Section 3 of Act 930 included language that provided for the transition of the old accountability law to the new law and required that districts classified as being in academic distress under the prior law, including the Little Rock School District, be classified as in need of Level 5 intensive support under the new law. The State Board met on July 13th, 2017 to classify Little Rock School District as in need of Level 5 intensive support. As required by the same law, the State Board promulgated rules governing implementation of the Arkansas Educational Support and Accountability Act, which became effective September 1st, 2018. As required by Section 8.08 of the rules, on September 13th, 2018, the Board adopted a District Improvement Exit Plan developed by the department in collaboration with district leadership. That plan included the exit criteria that the district must demonstrate under law to exit Level 5 intensive support, as well as the rationale behind each goal, the method of measurement for obtaining each goal, and the evidence that would be necessary to demonstrate achievement. Since adoption of the exit criteria, in accordance with Section 8.08.2 of the rules, the department has provided quarterly reports regarding Little Rock School District's progress toward meeting the exit criteria. These reports were presented for the board's review on September 13th, 2018, December 13th, 2018, March 14th, 2019, and June 13th, 2019, and are available on the department's website. Under Arkansas Code 615-2916 and Section 8.09 of the applicable rules, the State Board has many options for actions it may take when a district such as Little Rock is classified in need of Level 5 intensive support. These options include removing, reassigning, or suspending the superintendent, requiring annexation, consolidation, or reconstitution of the district, waiving provision of Title VI and corresponding rules, requiring reassignment of administrative, instructional, or support staff, requiring a school to institute and fully implement a student curriculum based on academic standards, requiring a school to provide professional development for teachers and administrators, removing one or more schools from the jurisdiction of the district and establishing alternative public governance and supervision, and requiring reorganization, closure, or dissolution of one or more schools. These actions may be considered by the board at any time after classification of the district. Under Arkansas Code 615-2917, if the established exit criteria have been met by the district, if they have demonstrated to the board and to the department that they have met the criteria, the State Board may return the district to local control through the appointment or election of a board upon recommendation of the commissioner. The State Board has the option to limit the powers and duties of that board and allow it to operate under the direction and approval of the commissioner. However, if the public school district has not demonstrated to the State Board and to the department that the district meets the criteria to exit Level 5 intensive support within 5 years of the assumption of authority, 615-2917 subsection C clearly states that the State Board shall annex, consolidate, or reconstitute the public school district. As you have heard—
Let me ask you to pause right there.
Yes.
Just one moment.
Absolutely.
So the assumption in January of 15
Yes, ma'am.
was under a different law than we have now.
Yes.
And when the law changed, the timeline did not change. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank
It was specified in Act 930 that the timeline did not start over. It was a continuation from January 2015. So the 5-year clock still tolls January 2020.
Okay, thank you.
When considering your 3 options, if the district does not meet exit criteria, the processes for annexation and consolidation are governed by Arkansas Code 613-1401 et sec and would not enable the current Little Rock School District to remain intact. As you have heard, reconstitution is not defined in the statutes or rules governing the Arkansas Educational Support and Accountability Act. Reconstitution is defined by other state statutes as the reorganization of the administrative unit or the governing school district board of directors of a school district. Another statute in law refers to reconstituting the leadership of a school district as removing permanently or suspending on a temporary basis the superintendent of the school district or any particular board members of a district, with the state board having the authority to appoint an administrator or call for the election of new school district board members to provide governance of the district, or both. These definitions are not included in the applicable law. They may be considered as guidance, but they are not binding on the state board. Looking outside of the law, common definitions of reconstitution also include changing the form of an organization and forming a state or organization again in a different way. Without an applicable definition in law, but keeping in mind the common basis of other definitions, the state board may consider alternate forms of governance as part of the reconstitution of Little Rock School District. In considering its options for reconstitution, this board must not run afoul of the requirements of the 2017 settlement agreement approved by the U.S. District Court in Doe v. ADE. That agreement requires the redrawing of high school attendance zones based on written race-neutral rationale no later than fall 2020. This board must also be cognizant of the Arkansas Supreme Court's decision in Lakeview. In the Lakeview decision, the Supreme Court clearly ruled it is the paramount responsibility of the state to ensure every student has a substantially equal opportunity for an adequate education. This responsibility was further made clear by the passage of Act 19 of the first extraordinary session of 2006. While the administrative management of schools can be deferred to an elected board under local control, the General Assembly has assigned the State Board of Education the ultimate responsibility for maintaining a constitutional system of public schools. You must keep in mind this authority and this responsibility in determining the future of the Little Rock School District. In January 2015, the State Board determined that the Little Rock School District was in academic distress and thus not meeting the constitutional standard of providing an adequate educational opportunity for all students, not only based on the 6 schools in academic distress, but based on the district as a whole and its low-performing history. While Arkansas Code 615-2917 specifies a 5-year period of time for a district to demonstrate it has met the criteria for exiting level 5, the mere passing of a 5-year period of time does not absolve the state of its statutory duty. That is why 615-2917 provides the board with options for taking further action to achieve adequacy and equity when it finds that the constitutional standard of adequacy has not been met upon the end of the 5-year period. And finally, should this board find that the best option for meeting its constitutional duty of ensuring an adequate education includes election of one or more members of a local school board, we must be cognizant of the applicable election laws and timelines. I won't go into all the details of those laws because they are quite lengthy, but I'm available to answer any questions on those as well as any additional questions you have on Act 930.
Does anybody have any questions at this point on the things she's covered thus far? Okay, Dr. Moore, did you have any questions? Ms. Chambers, did you? Okay, there being none, you may proceed.
Unless you have any questions, I'm done.
Right, and is someone going to go over other things in the exit criteria? Do we have someone prepared to do that? Doctor, I don't see him.
I mean, I have the exit
there he
criteria if
is.
you want me to read them, but
Mike Hernandez, State Superintendent for Office Coordinated Support and Service. Was there particular questions on those, or?
Does anybody have a specific question on the exit criteria? Let us get there.
Okay.
While we are, you might talk a little bit about the study that was commissioned on the Little Rock School District on the Central Office Organization and Human Resource Functionality Assessment.
Yes, ma'am.
That was completed last spring.
One of the things that came up during one of our presentations, and forgive me about the date, but there was a lot of discussion around central office. Mr. Poore along with the department, had already been in discussions related to how do we improve the human resource department within the Little Rock School District to make it functional, look at best practices around the country, and see how can we improve that aspect of functioning. At the same time, there was discussion around the organization of central office. So we did kind of a two-part in asking the Urban School Human Capital Academy to do a study, one based on overall HR functions within the district and needs, how they best support the schools within that district, and how did the central office function in terms of best practices and things that are out there, people having a few duties and things like that, or having too many duties placed upon them within their central office. And so that study was done, a presentation was made to the Community Advisory Board. Several of those actions were in the process of being done in terms of central office reorganization. They're still currently in process of doing things to refine their HR practices currently in the district based on the findings that group had.
Okay, and correct me if I'm remembering incorrectly, but one of the things is that particularly the academic and literacy side of the central office needed a different look and maybe different personnel, because they were not providing to the principals and in turn to the teachers in the past the kinds of support they needed to be the best they could be for the students.
So definitely one of the findings related to that report was this idea of principal supervisors, and regardless of whether it was some of the academic pieces or just operational pieces, how could these central office folks be organized in such a way that they were a direct support to the principals to make sure that they had all of their academic needs met, staffing, all of those things were more of a principal coach and support at the same time. And so that was part of the recommendations that came out, and one of the reasons for the restructuring with the executive directors within the Little Rock School District. And kind of give you simple terms, it was one of those that instead of having this idea of, as a principal in a building, if I had to call multiple people to get things done, as opposed to having that one person that I could call and say, hey, I've got this issue, I need you to help me and handle it, and also support. And so that's kind of the mindset with the design, is having those people the principals can directly call and say, I need your support. I don't have time to call all of these different people to get something done within the school.
Right, so that would in turn be an advantage for the teacher and or a parent who is needing some information.
Correct.
Okay.
Has that been implemented
So
with Fidelity or?
those hirings have been made, that structure's been changed, and we're in the process of making that work. And based on the reports that I've received from Mr. Poore and Sheila Whitlow, who's our direct lead in that, there's been a lot of progress made in a short time with getting that support directly to principals and getting things moving in a quicker manner.
Thank you.
Okay. On the exit criteria, I think we had some feedback that either people were not aware, and that is posted on the Little Rock School District website. Is that correct?
I believe it's posted on the Little Rock School District website. I know for a fact it is under the Community Advisory Board minutes from April, I believe, that meeting that was posted prior to their meeting before we went and did a public presentation for that Community Advisory Board.
And is it also posted on the ADE website?
It is in multiple places with the state board agendas that we've done our quarterly meetings where that's been included in those reports. There's also under the Public School Accountability School Performance section, there is a link to state authority websites that has exit criteria, all of the quarterly reports that have been given to date.
And I wonder if we could ask Mr. Poore, could you ask your people to make a quick link to that so that they don't have to hunt and peck and find and that, so it is readily accessible to the public at large? And you talked to me a little, or to the board, a little bit about the qualitative not the quantitative. Everybody understands the test and sort of understands the growth. But can you talk to us a little bit about the qualitative part of the exit criteria?
Right. So the qualitative part of that was developed based on the initial systems analysis that we worked through with the district early on. Is what we came to find about the schools in particular that were struggling were that they weren't performing some of the basic operations of school in terms of making sure that they had a curriculum in place for all students, making sure that there was that collaborative culture in terms of teachers working together to both grow their knowledge and at the same time support the students in their classrooms that have differentiated learning types. There was also kind of the fundamental part about how are principals directly supporting the teachers within their classroom in terms of evaluations, but also that support of how do we get on the same page of how we're supposed to be instructing these students, and do we have general agreement about what that looks like? So when I come in to do an evaluation or a critique, I know what I'm looking for, I know how to support you, and I know what kind of professional development to give to that teacher after that process is over. In addition to that, we've looked at things with the kind of the resources in terms of what is it do the schools truly need and the teachers need in their classroom to effectively do their jobs. And so we compiled those based on some of the research we did to identify these are kind of those fundamental things that the schools need to have in place with Fidelity to start to see those things move for the long term, not just initial blips like we jump over a certain threshold in terms of academic achievement, but what can be put in place to be sustainable for the long term that the schools are able to do, the principals understand, and the district has a mechanism to support that. And so as we've rewritten a lot of the school level plans through the district level plans, those have started to mirror even our AD support plan and how we work as we're trying to drive the school to ensure that these are happening with Fidelity. And so, we're still in that process of making sure everybody's clear on what those expectations are, but are starting to see some things that are being put in place that show indicators that these particular schools, along with the district, are starting to move in this direction.
And so the qualitative would find out the uniqueness of the student population.
Right. And the way it's kind of, I would say, agnostic on the types of students, because if they're doing this type of work, they're discerning out and making a tailored work plan and support plan for those schools and those students. And so it would very much be tailored to an individual school, not just here's a cookie cutter approach to doing it. The teachers and the building level principal have a lot of autonomy to decide what are those types of curriculum things that they're using, what are some of the instructional practices that they're going to use in the classroom that are very, to use the term, culturally responsive to the students that they have in their school.
And the principals, when you were talking about the evaluations, they are there to help a teacher find out the things she does well or he does well, and if they are things that they're missing, maybe not meeting the student's need, then they are there to help them grow by providing a mentor or being an example themselves and get them the help that they need.
Right. So, for example, within that part where it talks about predominant instructional practices, so if you've been a teacher in the classroom, there's always lots of things thrown at you. There's different initiatives, there's different ways of teaching, there's all these different things. And what this helps to do is it gets those teachers together with that principal, and they make a decision about if we're going to see all of these types of instruction that could happen, how do we boil it down to what it is that we're going to be about within this school? And what that leads to is those conversations. Because if I just say, go choose your type of instruction and do it this way, as a principal, it's hard for me to evaluate or support, mainly support, because I'm not sure what you're doing to be able to do that. And that's why it's that collective decision to say, hey, we know there's lots of things we could be doing. This is where our focus is, and this is what we're going to be about in our core application of instruction. And so how do we get better and grow at that? There may be some other things that we pull in, but we know for a fact we want to do these things every day in our classroom.
And can you flesh out how the use of professional learning communities, referred to as PLCs, how that assists in that.
So anytime that you're having to make these decisions, a lot of times in schools, if you don't have that safe and collaborative culture, what you have is administration making decisions that then the teachers have to then implement. And what this does is it builds that time and that culture to where those conversations can happen. And, you can start to get that feedback and growth by the teachers. And so that concept, or the professional learning community, is that ongoing collective cycle of knowledge that's growing and growing and growing. And so over time, that our hope, our belief is that that's going to lead to further academic achievement. But if you don't have that safe and collaborative culture in place, there's no way to move on to conversations about what instruction should look like. Have we agreed to what the curriculum is? We can always say, you're going to do this curriculum, you're going to teach this and teach it this way. But when those teachers close the door, that may or may not be happening. And so the belief is, to put it in common terms, it's a lot harder to tear down a fence that you built. And so that's kind of the mindset of what we're going to. It does take time. It takes a lot of work by individuals that may not be accustomed to doing that kind of work. But over time, that mindset will change. And we've seen some of that with our other districts as well.
Yes, to say, and this is not unique to Little Rock. This is
That's right.
Statewide, and there have been some pilots that done.
Yes, ma'am.
And
Can I ask a question?
sure, please.
Could you talk a little bit about where we are along the process of implementation of PLCs, and how far along have we gotten past the training and really starting to get into it, or how?
So in specific to Little Rock, there has been this, and it's not, I won't say just Little Rock, across the state, that this idea, we've been doing PLCs for a long time. And so we referred to that as PLC Light, where there's really not that true collaboration that's going on. It's about a meeting. And so, we, in our view of working with the district, we've seen a lot of those activities that are going on, but would still categorize that as PLC Light. And so where we're at with the district now, in comparison with some others, is they are now starting that work where they're getting the real training in PLCs and working with Solution Tree. We are still in that training process. They're not like a Dollarway, for example, that are in year 2 of their training program, where they're doing it holistically as a district. We have some schools within the Little Rock School District that are starting into that PLC Academy type stuff. They've gone to some trainings that we've hosted in the state, but we've had some that went to Rogers last summer. But as a holistic program designed for professional development to ensure this stuff's being implemented, that's in the process of going right now.
So we're just kind of getting.
We're starting to have those, and it does. I mean, we saw that, with Dollarway, is that they were an example where they started last year, and it was a lot of training, and it was a lot of things that were going on, but they had those embedded coaches that were kind of keeping them moving along the way. To this year, they're not necessarily so worried about the training part of it. Now they're into the doing and actually making these things happen. Do they still make mistakes? Yes. But they still have that ongoing coaching that's helping them progress. And that's kind of the same concept with our state pilot program, is we have schools that started as part of cohort 1 that are now in cohort 3. And they have a lot different conversations based on some of the feedback we've been getting from that too.
So you feel like that we've got a good first step in that direction, is that what you're saying?
I do. I think that, if we know your husband's former superintendent, and that's one of the things that my mindset as an administrator now is far different than it was, several years ago. And what I reference that because I've come to the conclusion that to truly change districts and communities, it's got to be about the teachers in the classroom. And if we spend our time not investing in that and investing in training and support and growing those leaders within those classrooms, then we're never going to see tremendous change. And so that's why I know we've moved in that direction as a state. And we believe that there's a lot of people that even people that we're in control of that fight over that concept. And it's hard to let go. It's hard as an instructional facilitator to say, giving that autonomy over to the teachers is kind of hard. I don't know what I'm supposed to do because I'm an instructional facilitator. And so it's taking that and trying to get a lot of those folks even back into the classroom where they can thrive and be able to support teachers at the same time. We're trying to move in that direction. And so it's very difficult work.
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Newton, just so the board's aware, Mr. Smith, Darian Smith, who's now Executive Director for Elementary in the district, as principal of Mablevale, he submitted an application for the Cohort 3 PLC pilot and was accepted. Subsequently was named by Mr. Poore to be the Executive Director of Elementary, and I know that he's very interested in seeing that work continue in the elementary schools across the district, and not just in Mablevale, but I know that that's something he's bringing to the central office as kind of a focus area.
Do you or one of your staff members, or maybe Ms. Smith or Dr. Pepper, want to respond to the progress we're making with the RISE training and the implementation of the curriculum that supports the science of reading?
We'll let Ms. Smith come.
While Stacy's coming, just also the other part is the high reliability schools, and that's part of what work has been going on, I think district-wide now. This year, I think last year it started with work at Little Rock Hall, at Hall High School, and then we're seeing that now move out into some of the other areas of the district as well.
Good evening, Stacy Smith. So work is continuing with literacy in the Little Rock School District. They did purchase new curriculum materials and resources for their teachers. I know that they had training that was happening right before school started, and I know that they've had some struggles with some of the curriculum that they purchased, getting everyone trained, and that was a struggle. I'm hearing positive things, though, as far as the implementation and moving forward with those materials. As far as the RISE trainings themselves, when we first rolled out RISE Arkansas, the K-2 training, we partnered with Little Rock School District to have their own trainers. And so we trained their literacy staff to become RISE trainers, with our staff supporting their folks.
And you can tell us when that is, what year that was?
3 years ago. So we have constantly been trying to make sure that they have their own trainers so that they can support their teachers in-house, with our staff supporting their literacy specialists. So RISE professional development within the Little Rock School District continues. Right now, we have a ADE staff member who meets weekly with staff from the Little Rock School District as far as coaching and supporting their literacy coaches who are going in and supporting at school levels, and so that's continuing. Last year, we had Dr. Tiffany Pride, who went in and worked directly with some of the elementary schools, implementing in their classrooms, and that was very successful. Dr. Tiffany Pride has been promoted as Director of Curriculum and Assessment within Learning Services, but she's helping oversee the transition with Kathy Mischuli, who is working with the literacy coaches in the Little Rock School District.
And how often is ADE staff in the Little Rock School District?
So last year with Dr. Pride as a literacy specialist, she was in there weekly. Okay. Actually, every day, 4 days a week, she was in one of the buildings. This year with Ms. Mischuli, she's working weekly with the literacy coaches of the school district to help support them going out into their buildings. So it's that idea of trying to build capacity for their folks to have their own ownership and take ownership. You know, with the adoption of the literacy materials, it was very important for the Little Rock School District to pick their own materials and resources, that it was chosen by their teachers and their staff. It was a process. I mean, Dr. Perkins was over that process with Mr. Poore. They had an exhaustive list of materials that they had committees of teachers that they were pulling in, reviewing materials. On our end, we were there to support and provide them input. When they would send us materials that, hey, these are things that we're looking at, our role of our literacy coaches and specialists here at the department, we would dig into those materials and we would go back with questions. You know, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Do you have enough support to be able to implement this? But in the end, we wanted the teachers and the literacy staff in Little Rock School District to choose their curriculum and materials. They made choices that we thought were solid choices. It was their recommendation, and we supported that, and that's what they're implementing this year. It won't be easy, okay? They have purchased new phonics programs. They've purchased a new literacy program with Wit and Wisdom and the Wilson system. They've got a lot going on. They have a new Pearson project in their high school. I mean, anytime you have new curriculum coming in, you've got new materials and resources to learn. They're also going through the RISE training and those reading strategies. It's tough. And so I don't want to act like this is a cakewalk for anyone. It's not for anybody in the state. Okay, so those teachers right now, they've got a lot on their plate to be able to process and implement in their classrooms, but they're doing it. I know just from visiting with Hope, who is now with the Little Rock School District and doing walkthroughs, she's come back and she's bragged about going into classrooms and elementaries and things that they're seeing in implementation. It's still tough. I don't want you to, it's still tough. And they're doing it though. They're working hard.
And do you feel that the people now, Ms. Worsham and Ms. Carpenter, Ms. Chambers, those people are supportive and on the same page with you all?
I have never found them not to be collaborative with us, whether it was Dr. Perkins I was working with, whether it was Mr. Poor, whether it was previous literacy coaches that we were working with. You know, when we first started the RISE PD, and we were trying to train, so 3 years ago, and we were trying to train the Little Rock literacy coaches to kind of take this on. This was back when we were paying folks to be a part of RISE. Okay, now they pay us to get the training, but back then when we first started, it was that first group. We had a little bit of bumps with fidelity, holding to the fidelity of the training. I met with Mike Poor at that time. He got on, we had a very frank conversation about what needed to occur to be able to move forward. 100% supported that. Their folks came into the department, and with Little Rock School District and the department, we actually wrote a training plan just for Little Rock. Okay, when we first tried to do all the trainings with specialists, Little Rock specialists were in with the co-ops, and they were in with other large districts throughout the state. And so it was this big group. You know, there was still, you know, this, there's this feeling that it's the ADE in a training, that we always have to come over, and, you know, we always kind of have to get over that piece. We ended up bringing Little Rock here to us with our literacy people. They sat elbow to elbow. They looked at the days. They tried to customize it to the Little Rock School District, and we wanted them, again, to have ownership over implementing that. They have been supportive. I mean, my literacy folks, every literacy person they work with in the Little Rock School District, they're supportive of. When I've done walkthroughs in the schools, I've been welcomed. So it's been supportive.
I know in some of the quarterly reports, there it appeared that there was some reluctance, either because I don't know what to do and maybe I'm embarrassed to ask, or was it reluctance in refusing to do?
What we found, and this is not in isolation to Little Rock School District, but what we found is we started the training in the science of reading with the Little Rock School District, again, 3 years ago started. However, the materials, resources, supplies that teachers had in the classroom with curriculum were not aligned. So we're giving these teachers great training, and they're going back to a classroom, and they didn't have the materials and resources to implement with fidelity. Okay, so the Little Rock School District, as Little Rock School District, with, you know, recommendations on, guys, we got to get this balanced out, and that was one of the things that we saw when we did walkthroughs. We saw that there was a mismatch, and that's the conversation we had about new curriculum needs to be looked at for teachers so that they have the support so that they can effectively implement. And so that's what they did last year. They took a lot of time in reviewing a lot of materials and resources. There's a lot of reading materials out there. They took the time to go through that. My staff took the time to dig in and give input. And I think they made wise choices. But again, it's not going to happen like that. It takes time to make significant change in your classroom, especially around reading instruction. And there is a shift in the way we're teaching reading right now, and that just takes time.
Anything else?
Madam Chair, just to add, and Stacy, you might talk about this a little bit, the review process, I mean, I think when we started that process to ensure that the materials, the curriculum, and everything that was being adopted, there kind of was a delay there because the process had started and some of the materials weren't aligned. And so Mr. Poore asked us to review that. So that created, I know y'all have heard some feedback about the short period of time of training and getting the materials in place. Well, that contributed to the delay just for the fact of making sure that those materials were reviewed and to be aligned with what we were teaching, what we were training, what we were doing statewide with respect to science of reading.
Right. I mean, again, I just want to point out that we felt very important that ownership was there within the Little Rock School District, that they had ownership of the choice that they were making. And yeah, it might have been easy for me to go in and say, you're narrowed to this, but we didn't do that. I mean, they received all the products from all the different folks. Their folks that had been trained went through those products. We went in and met with literacy coaches and gave pathways for things, questions for things for people to think about. So I think in the end they made a good choice, but it took a while. I would have liked to seen an adoption much earlier so that they could have gotten their training planned out much more systematically. They were trying to put a lot of training days in right before school starting. They're trying to think about their training days as they move on throughout the year. It's just hard. It's hard when you get new materials. I will say this, the dyslexia report that I read, actually this afternoon, numbers are up as far as identified students starting the school year. They seem to have, they've met every priority goal that we set out within the dyslexia plan from last year. They are implementing, they identified many more students. So I think that they're off to a good start there. Again, it's hard work, screening students, identifying students, scheduling students, but numbers are up as far as dyslexia services.
How is the department then going to continue to support that?
Would you start your sentence over so we can hear you?
Sure. How is the department going to support that then on the dyslexic and the numbers that have increased? How are you going to support
So the Little Rock School District has their own dyslexia person, Chandel Carpenter, who has worked regularly with Vicki King here at the department, and Vicki provides direct support to Ms. Carpenter. We have not, again, pushed in and taken over the process. What we've done is we've worked with them to create a plan that they then have taken back and have implemented. We tried to work with them to flesh out step-by-step things of what they needed to do, sent them a kind of a template of, hey, this is what we're kind of thinking you need to think about. They then took that plan and fleshed it out even more, changing up some of the orders, putting in suggestions in there that we had not thought of, and we worked together on that. And then from that plan, they've implemented for this point of the year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that sort of fleshed out the qualitative. The quantitative is based on 50% growth, and that's comparing a child only to himself and how much growth he's made in the past, and is he equaling or bettering that growth in the future. The effort there was to alleviate any bias that having low socioeconomic or whatever is getting in between that child and learning is not hindered by a test score only. So 30% of the quantitative is based on a point in time. The rest of it is 65% is based on other criteria. Okay, do you have any questions on Act 728? We were given information about that. If you'll look through your materials. We've looked at the report of the study that was done. Are there any parts of, asking the staff, ADE staff now, are there any parts of the Arkansas Educational Support and Accountability Act that were not covered that you think would be of benefit or point us in a direction there beyond what was done earlier?
I just have one thought that I'm not sure that that we covered it as completely as we need to.
Sure.
But the old ACTAP system, the old accountability system, was back in a time where there were disparities between the state accountability system and the federal accountability system. You had the movement from No Child Left Behind to ESEA flexibility. All along, you had the other component, which was the old academic distress piece in ACTAP. So, you know, what Act 930 did was with ESSA that came along at the federal level, really an attempt to align the two systems, the two accountability systems. So there would not be as much confusion down the road with respect to, you know, are we meeting state accountability, are we meeting federal accountability? Because that was feedback we got when we went around the state and had our listening tour for our ESSA plan. So, you know, feedback was, we have 3 different sets of criteria that we're trying to meet, and we get a label from all of it. And Courtney did do a good job of running down what, you know, focus schools, priority schools, all those things that this board in 2014 into 2015 were considering. So now the system that we have is one that does use multiple measures. It's not just within, you mentioned it, Ms. Zook, within the accountability system itself, you don't have just one test score. It is a combination of a number of things weighted in different ways. But then at the school level and at the district level, then you look at other data indicators. You know, so now we have a K2 assessment that gives a good indication across the state of how well are we doing now implementing math and reading at the earliest grades. How does that relate then as a student moves on into upper elementary school? I mean, so there are a number of components that we didn't have in 2014, 2015 that we have in place now. And many of those we've talked about before, but I think just bringing the board's focus to how better aligned the system is now to what it was 5 years ago, I think is an important point.
Okay, thank you. And I know that when the federal government passed the Every Student Succeeds Act, this department, and with Ms. Newton, who is a 4 decades teacher and a former Teacher of the Year, served on that committee with parents, school administrators, and then I, because I have become, was a teacher, serve as a liaison with the department that's working on that. And I think the thing that impressed me so much about all of that is the fact that they have what they call critical friends, and that is experts from around the United States, 6, am I right, Ms. Kaufman? 6 that come in on a quarterly or every 6-month basis to look at what we're doing and how it's affecting children and how it can be better or what we need to do differently, and then to make sure that everything we do every day is student focused and can be. So it's not just those of us here in Arkansas who know, you know, a lot of things, but having people from the outside look at the kinds of things we're doing and saying, that's really good, do more of that, don't, you know, back and forth. So it was a great opportunity for us and as well as the department. Any other thing of the information we've been provided that anybody has questions about? Anything else from the department that we need to cover?
I do have a question going back to at 9:30. Could someone from the department talk to us a little bit about the different levels of support, what each level of support, level 5, level 4, what those mean for the individual districts?
Would that be Ms. Kaufman?
Good afternoon. Deborah Kaufman, Public School Accountability. The Arkansas Educational Support and Accountability Act addresses in Section 8 of those rules the different levels of support. The intent, our intent in working through this piece of legislation is to provide what districts need at a point in time based on not just a test score, but their whole systems, their whole schooling system, to say how are we not only helping them improve now, but how do we help them build the capacity to continue this work so that students are benefiting from that work. Level 1 or general support is everybody. It's what do we put on our website so that people have access to it. It's our My School info that gives transparent accountability, transparent reporting available to every person with a computer or a cell phone. You can Google My School info if you've not done that. It just comes up, it's the first thing that pops up. It's very easy to access and you cannot break it. We've all tried, we've pushed as many buttons as possible. So general support is, what do schools need? They need accurate information. We put out business rules on our website. We've built one-pagers. We listen to what they say they need, and we provide those types of resources. All of those are available on our ESSA webpage, posted right there on the front of our website. We take phone calls. We have a team that's just dedicated to talking to school personnel about their needs and trying to help address those and address those quickly and accurately. So support, that general support, is what do school districts need. What I'm happy to report is under this new accountability system, school districts that used to avoid us and try to, don't call the department, now call the department and say, hey, this is something we're considering, or hey, this is a problem we've encountered, help us talk through it. And we talk through it and try to help them find the best solution for right now and for long term. Collaborative support is level 2 support. Collaborative support is just that. It's working together to help resolve whatever you're working on. Sometimes it's helping you fill out your applications. Sometimes it's helping you look at how you're monitoring, how you're evaluating your work, how you're giving feedback. Maybe it's help with your school improvement plan. Maybe it's help with your district support plan. It's different. Schools have different needs at different times. Coordinated support is level 3 support. Coordinated support is when we're working more closely with you. We're doing a little bit more monitoring of your work to not only say, did we help you get something in place, but did you sustain it? So we're looking at that it became a part of the way you do business. Directed, some school districts need us to help direct their allocation of resources. Help us think about how we use our federal funds differently. Help us look at the way we've staffed our classrooms, how we've staffed in our school, and how can we do that more efficiently, more effectively, so that our students' needs are being met. We're so lucky to have our educational co-ops and other so many partners that help us help school districts all along the way. Last year we had a school district that came to us and said, we want level 4 support. And when We offered that level of support and started working with them. Now we have other districts calling. Their boards are working together and sending us letters that say, we want that kind of support. We need you to come in and help us think through. And it's different for every school because their needs are so vastly different. If at my age, some days, you know, the knees are not great, and I appreciate somebody that's there to give me a helping hand. Other days, I may need two people, right? And that's the whole point of support is I don't hover. We don't hover over the districts, but when they need support, we hope that they feel confident that they can call us and get someone who's really invested in them succeeding. And I think we're seeing that more and more. Level 5 is the one you're most familiar with because those are the ones that we bring to you for intensive support. And at level 5, there are issues. So in our school districts that may not have systems that are functioning well enough that they can operate smoothly and effectively for all of their kids. That's where you get involved to help be more supportive, sometimes almost set a faster timeline than they may have been comfortable with, or to reallocate resources. Sometimes personnel need to change. Sometimes there's configurations, grade level configurations that need to change. And all of those things have to be looked at. Sometimes we need to send in for better or deeper analysis because things don't look appropriately. They're not, you know, you can tell something's not working right. We may be using the right words, but in reality, it's not all working as smoothly as it should be. So in closing, I would say levels of support are not labels. It's about the relationship we have with the school. If you need a little, we're here to give a little. If you need a lot, then we're here to give a lot. But I think the constant here is that it's all of us working together to ensure that students are succeeding.
And as a longtime educator yourself, teacher, literacy, how would you compare the way things are structured now as they were, say, in 2015 or back when you and I started many years ago as far as the support for the teacher in turn for the student?
So I think we're making great progress. And the reason I feel that way is because when humans are working together, when the adults are working together, kids succeed. And I've always been very fortunate to work in school districts where collaborative work was supported and encouraged, and I've always been fortunate to work with great educators that wanted to get together and work and do the very best job that we can do. So we just want to make sure that all of our schools have those same opportunities. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited with the direction that we're going. I'm excited about a transparent accountability system that uses multiple measures to help us think about our schools, that there's a lot of stakeholder feedback that's going into these plans, that people that really want to know can know because it's posted on our website. There's just really no holding back. When you and I started, commissioner memos were mailed to the superintendent. Now they're posted on our website. So that in itself, that transparency is such a big shift from where we started to where our schools are today.
Thank you. Anything else for Ms. Kaufman?
Thank you.
Anyone else that you have questions of? And I will say this, as we begin to wrap up tonight, I want you to ask if there's anything in addition to the links we've been provided, the hard copies that we've been provided, that you need, anything more you need from the department is those people that have spoken tonight are the ones that are here at the department that maybe you didn't ask tonight. Is there anything in particular, and if you don't have that handy right now, you know, you can contact them, but is there anything more that you are wanting or needing as you go through this and make some decisions about the Little Rock School District and the students that she serves?
I think it would be helpful, maybe Dr. Smith, to get a list of the schools and where they're at with the professional development at each building. How many years of training have they gone through for PLCs, for our reading training? Anything that I think would be helpful for the board, just to get a feel to make sure that we've got teachers trained at each building level and where they're at with that training.
Mr. Peckron? Anything in particular?
Not at this time.
Okay. Ms. Chambers or Dr. Moore, anything from you all?
This is Sarah.
Yes.
I think the district is coming on our meeting on the 12th. Is that correct?
Can you say that again, please? I didn't hear you.
This is
She
Sarah.
asked
Can
if
you
the
all hear me?
Yes, the district is coming on the 12th. Those legislative reports are due in September, and we will get an update then from them and the other level 5s, yes.
Okay, I think it would be helpful to hear just a few minutes on the human capital report and what changes, if any, have been implemented since April because of that.
Okay, did you hear that, Dr. Hernandez? Okay. Anything else? Okay. Ms. Newton?
Thank you.
Could someone give us, I know she put it in the timeline, the considerations that we're going to have, but maybe more information on some of the considerations there that she put in the timeline?
Did you hear that, Miss? Okay, say it again, louder, closer.
I'm sorry. You put in the other considerations, maybe you could give us a little bit more information on, give us a little bit more specific information on that.
The fleshing out.
timeline. Okay.
Is that right? Okay. Ms. Dean? Ms. McFetters, anything else? Mr. Williamson? Okay.
Just a question.
Okay.
Ms. Wendell, this packet of materials that the board has, is it posted? Is there a link on the website? Is it on the front? Where is it? Okay, so under communication, anyone that wants to see the packet of materials that the board was provided tonight, look under the communication tab and it will be there. Okay, and we'll share on social media as well.
And this meeting will be, is being live streamed, and the archive likely, if Dan is as quick as he usually is, should be up tomorrow for anything you want to, if people missed it, or if they want to look at it again, maybe you missed some point, that should be ready by tomorrow afternoon, is that correct? Or maybe the next day? The next day. I can only see your eyes. If you're saying something, I can't see.
Yes, ma'am. Can't get it uploaded. I'll have it finalized tonight and turned into her, so I'll have it uploaded tomorrow.
Okay. And if you go to the ADE website under State Board, it says meetings, and that's where you can find it. And then you go to 2019, and it will give this date, and you can access it there. Anything other for the good of the order? If not, we will adjourn the work session, and some of the board members have to leave, others may or may not. I am happy to stay at least until 8:30 and listen. You're adjourned. I will, as soon as people